Good evening, and welcome to Tea and Gravity, a little corner of the universe where we let science take off its lab coat, put on its fluffiest dressing gown, and make itself a warm cup of something soothing. I'm Professor Teabottom, your steadfast companion in improbable science. Let me take you to a place even more alien than my study, the tidal pools and ocean depths where the true loners of the animal kingdom reside. I'm speaking, of course, of the octopus, nature's shape-shifting genius, an 8-armed enigma who spends most of its life alone but can, when the mood takes it, communicate in ways that leave even the most extroverted humans, and most cats, baffled. Let me confess a soft spot for these cephalopods. My fascination began on a childhood holiday in Cornwall, a memory as briny as the benthic blend I'm currently pretending to enjoy. Picture, if you will, a damp, mop-headed youth with a notebook, a leaky pair of Wellingtons, and dreams of aquatic discovery. There, in a shallow pool, I watched a small, pale octopus gliding like a ghost among the rocks. Before my very eyes, it shifted from the colour of old bone to a thunderstorm purple, and with one delicate arm seemed to flick a passing crab away, as though dismissing an unworthy suitor. It was my first glimpse of an animal that didn't so much live in its world as rewrite it, one chromatophore at a time, if ever there were creatures who lived in their own strange, self-contained worlds. It's the octopus, and occasionally British rock bands. You see, octopuses are, for the most part, solitary. Unlike dolphins with their chattering pods or bees with their bustling hives, the octopus prefers a quieter existence. A borrowed shell, a den in the rocks, the steady rhythm of the tide. These are the constants of octopus life. Yet for all their hermit-like tendencies, when they do encounter another of their kind, a remarkable transformation occurs. Their skin, ordinarily the colour of sand or stone, becomes a living canvas, shifting, rippling, and pulsing with information. Imagine having an argument where, instead of raising your voice, you could simply turn bright red and sprout polka dots, or express delight by shimmering with electric blue stripes. Or, if you're Pig, communicate your utter disapproval of bath time by taking on the colour of mouldy cheddar. It's a system I rather wish were available at academic conferences, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we can talk about octopus conversation, we must appreciate just how profoundly strange these animals are. They have 3 hearts, 1 for the body, 2 for the gills. Blue blood, thanks to a copper-based molecule called hemocyanin, and a nervous system that places more neurons in their arms than in what passes for their brain. Picture a creature so flexible that it can pour itself through a hole the size of a pound coin, rearrange its very skin to mimic coral, and still find time to open a stubborn jar of sardines. Pig, for all his talents, remains deeply envious of the jar opening. There is, of course, a delicious irony in the fact that these supremely solitary creatures have developed one of the most sophisticated systems for silent conversation in the animal kingdom. Their skin is equipped with thousands of chromatophores, tiny pigment sacs that expand and contract at a moment's notice, allowing them to flash, fade, ripple and glow in a choreography of colour and pattern. Add to this the papillae, little muscles that create bumps and spikes in their skin, and the whole animal becomes a living, breathing emoji keyboard. And yet, for all their cleverness, octopuses remain mystery wrapped in enigma, rolled in seaweed, and, if you're unlucky, launched at your wellies. When they meet, perhaps to mate, or dispute a den, or simply cross paths, an entire conversation unfolds in silence. Colour flares signal aggression or submission. Subtle ripples indicate curiosity or caution. A quick flash of white might be a warning, a slow pulsing, an invitation. Pig naturally attempts to join in. As I speak, he's sprawled next to the lamp, shifting from sleep loaf to alert crescent. Then, when he realises supper is not forthcoming, executing a rather pointed, full sprawl of protest. If only he had chromatophores, I suspect the whole study would glow with righteous orange. It's tempting on nights like this to imagine what it would be like if we could communicate as octopuses do. To shimmer with delight instead of giggling, to ripple with apology, to express all our messy, tangled human thoughts in waves of colour and light. Perhaps we'd understand each other better, or at the very least we'd make for more interesting dinner parties. The world, after all, is full of conversations waiting to be had, if only we learn how to see them. So, as the rain taps its rhythm on the window and Pig finally settles with a sigh that speaks volumes, let us raise our mugs, benthic blend or otherwise, to the octopus, the solitary genius, the unsung conversationalist, and proof that sometimes the quietest creatures have the most to say. Next time we'll dive deeper, quite literally, into the marvellous mechanics of octopus colour change, and see how these living mood rings paint their secret messages on the canvas of the sea. If you have ever watched the morning sun pour itself across the surface of a tide pool, light trembling through shifting water, dappling seaweed and sand, you already have a sense, however faint, of what it's like to see an octopus change colour. But an octopus's skin is no passive canvas. It's an orchestra pit, a storybook, a living lantern, and it responds to the world with a speed and artistry that would leave the greatest painter sighing into their turpentine. Tonight, as rain drips in fat rhythmic plinks from the eaves, I pour a second cup of benthic blend. Pig, having failed to camouflage himself with a tea towel, more on that in a moment, has retired to the window ledge, his fur catching the lamp's glow like a halo made of marmalade and old stories. The room itself feels steeped in blue, a deep briny blue, as if the sea itself were leaning in to listen. Now let us imagine. Far below the storm-tossed surface the world is different. Sunlight thins into shafts, filtering through water heavy as velvet. The sea floor is littered with shells and shadow, and here, pressed against a rock, an octopus rests, utterly invisible until with a thought it transforms. This is the secret. Octopus skin is not just coloured, but alive with colour. Across their entire surface, octopuses are covered in tiny elastic sacs called chromatophores, each one a miniature balloon filled with pigment, ochre yellows, volcanic reds, bruise purples, and umber browns. When a signal from the octopus's nervous system arrives, these chromatophores stretch open or snap shut, revealing or concealing their hue. Some expand in a heartbeat, bursting into view. Others shrink, vanishing into the pale underlayer. Imagine a pointillist masterpiece, a million dots of ink, each one able to swell, fade, or vanish at command. This, magnified 1,000-fold and played across supple, ever-moving flesh, is the miracle of octopus camouflage. A moment ago our hero was a lump of rock, now she is sand or coral, or, should the mood strike, a bolt of lightning. The effect is breathtaking. Watch an octopus hunting, and you'll see her melt from shadow into sunlight, then explode in a flare of white to startle a crab. A nervous octopus pressed against a reef might ripple with storm cloud grey, or pulse like a warning beacon with deep, violent red. The transformation is so fast, so complete, that even experienced divers sometimes find themselves blinking. Sure, they've imagined it, and there's more. Beneath the chromatophores lie other layers, iridophores and leucophores. Iridophores reflect and scatter light, painting the skin with metallic blues and greens, shifting with every change in the angle of the sun. Leucophores are the wild cards, scattering whatever light strikes them, adding depth and shimmer, a touch of moonlight beneath the waves. The result is a living tapestry, at once subtle and dazzling, shifting second by second like dreams made visible. Pig, not to be outdone, made his own attempt at colour matching earlier this evening. While I was fetching biscuits, He crept beneath the tea towel and arranged himself in what he must have considered a perfectly inconspicuous lump. Alas, Pig's camouflage is somewhat compromised by the exuberant orange of his tail, which stuck out like a warning buoy in a harbour. When I discovered him, he blinked up in protest, as if to say that a truly supportive professor would appreciate the artistry involved, not just the result. And in his way, he's right. Even a failed disguise is a bold experiment. Back beneath the waves, the octopus's skin can do more than match colours. With a ripple of neural command, she can raise tiny bumps and spikes, papillae, turning smooth flesh into the gritty texture of barnacle, pebble or shell. A passing grouper would swear he'd seen nothing but a scrap of stone. But should the octopus need to make a point, to warn, to threaten, or perhaps to flirt, her skin can surge with patterns, stripes, spots, shifting rings of colour pulsing along her arms like signals along a telegraph wire. This is not just camouflage, it's communication. In the underwater dusk, a flash of white says, "Back off." A slow fade to deep brown says, "Nothing to see here." And a ripple of blue can mean, well, that's the mystery, isn't it? We know so little of the code, only that it is rich, layered, and fiercely expressive. Two octopuses meeting on a moonlit reef might exchange an entire conversation in half a dozen heartbeats, warning, greeting, threatening, perhaps even joking. Octopuses, after all, have a reputation for mischief. I suspect they would appreciate Pig's sense of humour. On occasion, scientists have watched an octopus flash one colour on one side and another on the other. A literal split-screen message, as if sending two different notes at once. The world's first underwater multitasker, carrying on private business while broadcasting a public statement. It's impossible not to be awed by the biological machinery behind it all. Each chromatophore is controlled by its own tiny nerve, and the octopus's brain is a tangled marvel, able to coordinate millions of such changes in an instant. Imagine trying to control every pixel on a screen, not with a computer, but with your thoughts and 100,000 delicate strings. Pig, meanwhile, has given up on subterfuge and is now stretched out in a patch of lamplight, his fur glowing like marmalade fire. If he had chromatophores, I imagine he'd shift from smug gold to bright pink at the mention of bath time, or perhaps ripple with royal blue should anyone open a tin of sardines nearby. Instead, his message is simple: comfort, contentment, a subtle invitation to stop writing and start ear-scratching. There is a lesson, I think, in the way octopuses and Pig both meet the world. Bold, changeable, unafraid to be both hidden and dazzling as the mood requires. Their colours and patterns, whether natural or accidental, are the languages of presence, of being truly, fully there, whatever the surroundings. So tonight, as the rain softens and Pig finally drifts to sleep, I find myself grateful for the marvel of living colour, for the octopus's shifting palette, for the warmth of a ginger cat in lamplight, for the way our own moods are written not in pigments, but in small gestures, quiet tones, and the laughter that flares up as suddenly as an octopus flashing white on a reef. Next, we'll explore how these colours are not just for hiding, but for speaking, how an octopus can flash and ripple to send silent messages through water thick as midnight. Until then, may your dreams be painted in shifting colours, and your camouflages, accidental or otherwise, always be met with gentle discovery. There is a special kind of silence under the sea, a hush not of emptiness, but of possibility. The world glimmers with shifting light, as if someone has spilled a bottle of quicksilver into the water, and every surface is alive with secrets. In this realm, words as we know them are useless. Instead, the language is one of light and shadow, flash and ripple, every phrase spoken through living skin. Octopuses, the poets of this silent world, have developed a grammar more immediate and expressive than any spoken tongue. Where we rely on sound, their language is pure theatre, instant, vivid, and undeniably dramatic. If you were to swim among the kelp and coral at twilight, you might see an octopus tucked in the shadows, her body a muted brown, every contour soft as sand. But let a rival or a crab approach, and her colours flare, sharp whites, thunderstorm purples, sudden explosions of umber and ink. The entire animal becomes a message, broadcast in patterns and hues. I remember once, while visiting an aquarium in Brighton, watching two octopuses in neighbouring tanks. Their glass partitions shimmered with reflections, and the room was filled with that peculiar hum, part filter, part anticipation, that always comes with the promise of something extraordinary. One octopus, a sleek female with arms as long as my walking stick, lounged against the gravel. As a caretaker swept past, she flashed an iridescent wave down her body, a greeting or perhaps a warning. I see you, but I am not to be trifled with. The second octopus, more reserved, rippled with gentle golds, then vanished into the background. Her version, I suspect, of a polite no comment. What scientists have learned, peering into tide pools and aquariums and remote reefs, is that octopus colour is not just camouflage. It is conversation. There are recurring themes: aggression, courtship, curiosity, but the lexicon is flexible, the grammar complex. Some patterns are fleeting, flaring across the body like the crack of lightning across a summer sky. Others pulse and fade, a slow heartbeat of signal and response. Imagine for a moment an argument between two neighbours. Let's call them Oscar and Olivia. Oscar approaches Olivia's den, perhaps hoping to borrow a shell or just to see who's about. Olivia, not in the mood for visitors, darkens her skin to a deep maroon and curls her arms tightly beneath her mantle. Oscar hesitates, then flashes a band of white along his side. Hesitation, maybe, or a grudging respect. There's a pause. Olivia uncurls, shifts to a mellow ochre, and slowly extends an arm in a gesture that could mean, "Come closer, if you dare." All of this happens in silence, with no sound but the rush of distant water and the flutter of a fish's fin. The conversation is finished in seconds, but its meaning is unmistakable. Octopuses, you see, employ a sort of Morse code, one written in blinks and shimmers, dots and dashes of colour. Quick flashes often mean warning, back off or else. A sudden flare of white across the body can halt a nosy crab in its tracks, while a banded zebra-like pattern can broadcast either aggression or the octopus's own confusion. I'm not sure what you are, but I'll pretend to be dangerous just in case. The repertoire is broad, and individual octopuses seem to improvise, mixing patterns and colours according to circumstance, mood and whim. Pig, for his part, has taken to practising his own version of octopus grammar. Just yesterday he attempted to warn me off the armchair by sprawling across it in what I can only describe as a maximum occupancy display. All four paws extended, tail flared, eyes narrowed to slits of mild threat. When I approached with my book, he emitted a long, slow purr that was, frankly, less about affection than about staking his claim. I considered flashing a warning colour in response, but settled instead for the age-old British tactic of sighing and making another cup of tea. Back in the ocean, octopus displays can be startlingly beautiful. Some species pulse with electric blues, others shimmer with metallic greens and coppers. In the inky depths, a flash of light can mean life or death, an invitation or a challenge. Scientists have recorded octopuses using rapid colour changes in battles of bluff, pretending to be more dangerous than they are, or signalling to a mate with a subtle private ripple of pale pink down one arm. There is evidence, too, that some patterns are directed. An octopus might display bold, dark bands on the side facing a rival, while remaining bland and unremarkable on the side facing a mate or a passing fish. Two conversations at once in a grammar we are only beginning to decipher. What's perhaps most astonishing is the sheer subtlety involved. Some octopuses can change not only their colour, but their brightness and the texture of their skin, raising bumps and ridges to match the knobbliest coral or the smoothest pebble. Their displays are tailored to the viewer and the situation, a flash of drama for a threat, a slow fade to grey for blending in, a soft ripple of colour for, well, who can say? Perhaps even octopuses have moments where they simply feel joyful, and the only answer is a dance of light and colour in the dark. It's easy to imagine on nights like this that we too might learn to speak in colour, to ripple with comfort, flash with warning, shimmer with curiosity. Pig certainly tries. Now, as I glance over, he's curled up with his tail over his nose, a living question mark painted in orange. The lamp throws a golden halo around him, and for a moment the study seems to pulse with possibilities. A silent, warm message between two old friends. In the end, the grammar of colour is a language of presence, of being seen, and of seeing. Octopuses may live alone, but when they meet, they reveal a world of feeling in a single glance, a ripple, a sudden flare of brightness. It's a reminder, perhaps, that sometimes the loudest conversations are the ones spoken in silence, and that the deepest connections can be made with nothing more than a shimmer in the dark. Next, we'll see how the octopus's body itself becomes a storyteller, how arms, mantle and movement all play their part in the grand, wordless dialogue of the sea. Until then, may your own colours be bright, your silences meaningful, and your conversations, spoken or otherwise, filled with warmth. Some languages are spoken not in words or even in colour, but in the sweep of a hand, the tilt of a head, the set of a jaw. The best conversations, I find, often happen without a single syllable, just a knowing glance across the tea table, or a conspiratorial twitch of a cat's tail beneath the lamplight. In the world of the octopus, these silent gestures become a powerful vocabulary, adding nuance and richness to every chromatic proclamation. Tonight, Pig is attempting to communicate his feelings about supper using his own unique dialect. A long, slow stretch along the back of the sofa, an arm, extended dramatically, paw flexed as if reciting Shakespeare, followed by a delicate yawn that reveals, if I'm not mistaken, the pink of mild disappointment. There's a poetry to it, a whole sonnet of appetite and hope, expressed in the gentle ballet of feline bones. If you could shrink yourself down, slip through the weave of your carpet and out beneath the sea, you'd discover that octopuses speak this way too. Their words are written not just in dazzling colour, but in the way they move, the arch and flow of arms, the elegant bloom of the mantle, the very set of the eyes in their odd alien faces. Imagine, if you will, a stretch of rocky reef in the blue-green dusk. Two octopuses, Oscar and Olivia, encounter one another on a narrow ledge. The tension in the water is palpable. Each animal hovers for a moment, considering its next move. Oscar, perhaps feeling bold, stretches his arms wide, like an umbrella open to the rain, his body seeming to double in size, every sucker on display. Olivia, more cautious, contracts her arms close to her body, forming a compact, unthreatening ball, her mantle pulled low. No need for a punch-up if a bit of body language will do. It's negotiation, showmanship even. In octopus society, sometimes the best way to win is simply to appear bigger, bolder, or less interested in the business of fighting. A slow, deliberate extension of the arms might say, "I'm strong, best not to challenge me." A sudden flattening of the body against the rocks whispers, "Nothing to see here, just a humble bit of seaweed, please move along." These silent exchanges are performed with astonishing grace. An octopus can flow from one shape to another with the ease of a ribbon caught in a current. In moments of high drama, they may arch their mantles upward, creating a silhouette sharp as a crescent moon, or elongate their bodies into slender shadows that slip through the reef like smoke. It's not all bluster and bluff, though. The arms themselves are astonishingly expressive. When relaxed, they dangle in gentle, undulating spirals, trailing behind as the animal drift from one hiding place to the next. In times of tension, they bunch up, ready for action, or curl protectively beneath the mantle, like a shy child clutching a favourite blanket. Sometimes, when curiosity outweighs caution, a single arm will stretch out, tiptoeing across the sand to prod at a shell or poke a snoozing crab. There is, too, a subtler conversation in the way octopuses use their suckers. Each arm is lined with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of these delicate, sensitive discs, each one able to taste and feel the world with uncanny precision. I once watched a film of an octopus inspecting a potential mate, running an arm gently along her mantle, suckers fluttering in a slow, exploratory dance. It was as if they were exchanging secret handshakes or tracing the outline of a silent question. Are you friend, foe, or something more interesting? Pig, ever the experimenter, attempts a similar manoeuvre on the string of my dressing gown, winding it slowly around his paw before giving it a considered lick. I suspect he's trying to communicate something vital, perhaps about the urgent necessity of snacks, but the grammar is alas beyond my current understanding. In more contentious encounters, posture becomes the entire argument. An octopus defending a cherished den may arch up, arms splayed, looming over the entrance in a display worthy of an Elizabethan actor. The intruder, sizing up the odds, might flatten against the sand or raise just one arm in tentative salute. No quarrel here, old chum. If neither backs down, the conversation can escalate. Arms whip outward, bodies loom and shrink, colours pulse, and occasionally a wrestling match ensues, arms and suckers tangled in a knotted flurry. Yet most disputes are resolved with nothing more than a well-timed pose and a measured withdrawal. What's marvellous is how the whole body participates in these dialogues. The eyes set high and wide on the head, swivel independently, scanning the scene, sometimes narrowing or widening to signal interest or alarm. The mantle, like a velvet balloon, can expand and contract, adding weight to any performance. Even the skin itself, as we learned, can ripple with texture, turning smooth or spiky, as if adjusting the volume on a visual radio. These body language exchanges aren't limited to rivals. In the rare moments when octopuses meet to court, or even more rarely to share a meal, the movements become softer, more tentative. Two arms intertwine, a mantle dips in greeting. There's a vulnerability to it, a willingness to be seen and not just to hide. Scientists have described octopus courtship as a kind of underwater minuet, full of feints and flourishes, each movement a carefully calibrated invitation. And while humans and cats might never achieve the full poetry of octopus gesture, there's a kinship there, a reminder that much of what we say is said without words. A hand on a shoulder, a shared glance, the gentle curl of a tail around an ankle, all are in their way as eloquent as the grandest oration. Pig, now stretched to maximum length across the sofa, offers a final pointed sigh, the sort that means, in every language, it's bedtime, old friend. I can't help but agree. As I watch him settle, I think of all the silent conversations that have filled this house over the years, and of the octopuses far below, sculpting the water with arms and stance, their bodies speaking volumes without ever uttering a sound. Next, we'll see how these gestures and colours work together in the underwater theatre of conflict and compromise, how octopuses avoid fights, make friends, and keep the peace in a world without words. Until then, may your arms be expressive, your mantle poised, and your home filled with the gentle grammar of presence. In the world beneath the waves, where everything glimmers and hides and shifts, the stakes of each encounter can be high. Every brush with another creature, be it friend, rival, or indifferent neighbour, is fraught with possibilities, cooperation, confrontation, or a quiet slide away into the shadows. And for the octopus, master of camouflage and nuance, the art of not fighting has become something of a specialty. Tonight the rain is little more than a gentle mist, blurring the edges of the garden and painting halos around the lamps outside. Pig, having concluded his campaign for extra supper was in vain, is now at the window, nose pressed to the glass. He watches the neighbourhood cats with the intense concentration of a diplomat at a peace summit. Every flick of his tail, every tilt of his head speaks volumes. This windowsill is mine, but let us avoid any unpleasantness, shall we? Down in the blue hush of a coral reef, similar negotiations play out. For octopuses, conflict is costly. An injured arm takes time and precious energy to regrow, and food is never guaranteed. So, they have evolved a repertoire of warnings and winks, a sophisticated ballet of gesture, colour and posture, designed to diffuse trouble before it ever escalates to a tangle of arms. Picture, if you will, an octopus, let's call her Olivia, tucked into the curve of a shell-strewn hollow. The reef glows with the dusty gold of late afternoon light, filtered and softened by the tide. A second octopus, Oscar, drifts nearby, his curiosity piqued by a faint whiff of shellfish. He approaches, not with stealth, but in the open, arms out, mantle lifted, the underwater equivalent of a neighbour knocking politely on your front door. Olivia stiffens, and her colour deepens from the soft beige of sand to a thunderous maroon. This is the first warning, a visual back off, as clear to Oscar as if she'd shouted across the water. Not to be deterred, or perhaps simply hungry, Oscar responds with his own change, flashing a bright white band down his side, a common octopus signal for uncertainty, or a plea for negotiation. I come in peace, but I'm willing to stand my ground. Now the stage is set for a classic underwater standoff. Olivia's arms flare outward, making her appear larger and more formidable. She raises two of them in a slow, deliberate arc, a posture of both warning and confidence, something between a matador's flourish and a mother's stern glare. Oscar, realizing he's outmatched, contracts himself slightly, letting his colours soften, his body sink lower to the reef, a signal of submission, or at least of disinterest in further conflict. Just as in a well-mannered drawing room, these rituals usually do the trick. More often than not, a few exchanged words of colour and stance are enough to settle the matter. Oscar turns away, perhaps seeking an easier meal, and Olivia relaxes, her skin returning to the gentle, mottled hues of contentment. No arms lost, no injuries incurred, just another day in the ceaseless negotiation of reef life. There's a certain wisdom in this, one I suspect Pig understands in his own furry way. When faced with a challenger, be it the neighbour's tabby or an errant vacuum cleaner, Pig's first response is not aggression, but careful calculation. He'll stare, unblinking until the message is clear. This is my territory, but I have no desire for a row. Only if pressed will he escalate, back-arching, fur-fluffed, tail puffed like an old pipe cleaner. 9 times out of 10, the matter ends with a graceful withdrawal and a return to mutual ignoring. Scientists have observed that octopuses use more than just colour to convey intent. The tempo of change is important too. A rapid flash or pulse is generally seen as aggressive, a strobe light warning that says, I am ready to defend myself. Slow, rhythmic shifts, on the other hand, can be calming, like the slow exhale of a tense breath, or an olive branch extended across the currents. Some species even display false eye spots or mimic more dangerous animals in a last-ditch attempt to deter attackers. It's the oldest trick in the evolutionary book. If you can't be the biggest or the toughest, sometimes looking the part is enough. Then there are the subtle winks, the little gestures of intent that pass between creatures who would rather not risk a fight. Two octopuses might meet in the narrow confines of a den, and after a brief tense exchange of colour and arm gestures, both decide the real prize is not the shelter, but the avoidance of injury. It is in many ways a lesson in diplomacy, one that many a human could benefit from, particularly at family gatherings or on late-night trains. Pig, now curled at my feet, stretches a single paw in my direction, eyes half closed. It is, I think, his own peace offering, a gentle reminder that not every confrontation must end with claws or hisses. Sometimes, a simple gesture is enough to keep the peace. The reef, in its infinite variety, is a place where such gestures mean survival. Octopuses know instinctively that every arm, every flash of colour, every slow retreat is an investment in the future. Live to see another tide, and the world is full of new opportunities. A fresh shell, an unguarded crab, a quieter corner of the reef. In this underwater world of negotiation, perhaps the truest strength lies in restraint. The octopus reminds us that there is grace in the art of avoidance, and power in the gentle gesture that says, "Let's not." If only we all could learn to flash our colours in warning, retreat with dignity, and save our battles for those truly worth fighting. So as the rain finally stills and Pig resettles with a sigh that says, "Truce for now," I offer this thought. May we find our own ways to de-escalate, to warn gently, and to step aside when wisdom says it's time. Next, we'll dive into the world of courtship and curiosity, the delicate dances and colour changes that speak of desire, intrigue, and the possibility of something more. Until then, may your warnings be heeded, your gestures kind, and your windowsill undisputed. There's something irresistibly romantic about a moonlit tide pool, a world suspended between land and sea, silvered and shimmering in the gentle pull of the moon. It's a place made for quiet courtship, for secrets exchanged in glances and the dance of shadows. And in this twilit world, the octopus, usually a creature of solitude and stealth, becomes, for a brief, heart-thumping moment, a performer on the stage of desire. Tonight, the air in the study is laced with the scent of rain, and that peculiar anticipation that comes just before a story of love unfolds. Pig, of course, is doing his best to ignore the whole business, performing a full-bodied loaf pose on the armchair, though I notice his ears twitch every time the word romance is mentioned. He's never quite forgiven me for that one embarrassing moment involving the neighbour's Siamese and an ill-timed tumble from the fence. We all have our courtship tales, I suppose. Now, while octopuses are solitary by nature, even the loneliest of cephalopods feels the urge to seek company, at least for the fleeting interval that courtship requires. And what a spectacle it is! Courtship among octopuses is an exquisite ballet of colour, gesture, and cautious optimism, performed in near silence beneath the watchful eyes of the moon and 100 curious fish. Let us imagine the scene. A broad, shallow bay, the sea calm and glassy as a teacup left undisturbed on the breakfast table. In the shifting shadows, a male octopus, let's call him Oscar for tradition's sake, spots a potential mate. Olivia, resplendent and mysterious, drapes herself across a patch of pebbled sand, her body a tapestry of slow-moving, iridescent hues. Oscar approaches, but not directly. Oh no! This is no time for hasty declarations or the aquatic equivalent of fancy a drink. Instead, he elongates his arms and mantle, flowing across the sand with the languid grace of silk in water. His skin pulses with deep, confident reds and delicate golds, each change a line in his silent sonnet. Notice me, but do not be alarmed. Admire, but don't run. Olivia responds at first with caution, a ripple of pale stripes along her arms, a softening of her posture. She's watching, weighing. perhaps remembering a less than dignified suitor from seasons past. If Oscar is too bold, she'll turn a steely grey and sink into the sand, all invitations rescinded. But if he reads the mood rightly, the dance continues, and what a dance it is. Oscar will lift a single arm, his hectocotylus, to give it its gloriously scientific name, and wave it gently, sometimes reaching toward Olivia as if offering a handshake from across the void. This arm, unlike the others, is specially adapted for romance. It will, if all goes well, transfer a packet of sperm to Olivia, securing the next generation in a gesture as delicate as passing a secret note in school. The courtship is more than mere biology. It's an interplay of curiosity and risk, trust and the thrill of the unknown. Oscar must balance boldness with deference, as a single misstep, one overly enthusiastic colour flash, one arm wave too high, could earn him a sharp rebuff, or in some species a very quick end to his romantic ambitions. Olivia, meanwhile, is no passive recipient. She signals in turn, a flare of white for encouragement, a darkening mantle for caution, and sometimes the breathtaking display of half her body, bathed in one colour and half in another, the ultimate in cephalopod ambiguity. It's courtship by semaphore, a love letter written in shifting tones. The delicacy of the encounter would put any Regency ball to shame. There is no small talk, no clumsy jokes about the weather, just a careful, wordless negotiation of intent. The arms intertwine, sometimes briefly, sometimes for longer, each sucker tasting, learning, deciding. The octopuses circle one another in slow motion, their bodies painting the sand with light and shadow, hesitation and hope. If both are agreeable, the ritual proceeds, Oscar gently transferring his precious packet, Olivia accepting it with a stillness that belies the silent excitement within. Not all encounters end so well. Sometimes, Olivia is simply not impressed, or Oscar misjudges the moment. A swift flash of dark colour, a tense flattening of the arms, and it's over. No drama, no tragedy, just a missed connection in the eternal tide of the sea. Life, as any seasoned romantic will attest, goes on. Pig, meanwhile, has shifted from loaf to full sprawl, his own overture to the notion of togetherness. I am open to affection, but only on my terms. He stretches one paw toward me, pads flexing, then pulls back. A courtship, if you will, with built-in escape clauses. The beauty of octopus courtship lies not only in its elegance, but in its economy. There is no waste, no excess, just the simplest, purest forms of display and response, tuned by millions of years of evolution for maximum efficiency and minimum risk. It's as if they know that love, like life underwater, is fleeting and precious, best enjoyed in the moment and then remembered fondly as the currents carry them onward. When the dance is done, Oscar withdraws, fading once more into the landscape, his body returning to the muted browns and greys of solitary days. Olivia, now heavy with potential, finds a den, seals herself in, and waits for new life to stir, a quiet epilogue to the brief, blazing drama of colour and touch. So next time you watch the moon rise over a pond, or catch Pig eyeing the neighbour's tabby with a blend of interest and calculation, think of the octopus, alone, yet not, singing their stories in ripples and waves. Next, we'll explore the secret lives of female octopuses, their unique signals, silent strength, and the challenges of being misunderstood in a world of colour and gesture. Until then, may your dances, however brief, be graceful, your curiosity keen, and your own courtships always end with a gentle touch and a satisfied sigh. The world is full of misunderstood heroines, figures who work their magic in quiet corners, who bear secrets and stories behind every glance, every pause. Nowhere is this truer than in the silent, shimmering world of female octopuses. Their lives, lived mostly out of sight, are laced with drama, endurance, and a talent for communication that rivals any master of the stage. Tonight, the rain is back in earnest, tapping out cryptic messages against the glass. My study glows in golden puddles of lamplight, while Pig, feline queen of the windowsill, sits enthroned upon her cushion, tail wrapped elegantly around her toes. She regards the storm with an inscrutable expression, equal parts philosopher and skeptic, a fitting companion for tonight's story of mysterious signals and subtle strength. In the shadowed halls of the sea, female octopuses are masters of both presence and disguise. While males may flaunt their colours in sweeping courtship displays, it is the females who hold the real power. The final word, the last gesture, the subtle command. But, as with all good stories, things are rarely straightforward. Let's return to Olivia, our heroine from earlier, still poised amid her mosaic of stones and shells. When a suitor arrives, Olivia becomes a living semaphore. She might flash a band of crisp white along her mantle, a signal of openness, an invitation to approach, or perhaps simply a request for caution. She might soften her skin, turning from jagged rocks to the gentle velvet of sand, her eyes glinting in the blue-green dusk. But let us not imagine Olivia as a passive recipient of affection. Female octopuses are expert negotiators, wielding their bodies like actors on a vast waterlogged stage. If a male approaches too boldly, Olivia will not hesitate to darken to an imposing shade, or raise her arms in a gesture that says in no uncertain terms, "Not now, and not ever, sir." A well-timed change of colour can rebuff, rebuke, or occasionally encourage the more persistent Oscar to try his luck elsewhere. Scientists have watched female octopuses deploy these signals with subtlety and flair. Sometimes, when truly receptive, Olivia will adorn herself in a shimmering cloak of pale stripes, her whole body rippling with anticipation. At other times she'll maintain a steely grey, arms coiled protectively, a message as clear as any "do not disturb" sign. It's a dance of patience and precision, every gesture calculated, every display meaningful. There's a curious power in this ambiguity. In a world of predators and peril, a female octopus's ability to send mixed signals is a survival tactic as much as a social one. By masking her intent, one side of her body white and the other deep brown, Olivia can keep rivals and would-be mates guessing, buying herself time, space, and, most importantly, choice. When the dance is over and a mate has been selected, or firmly rebuffed, the female's life shifts to its most heroic phase. She finds a suitable den, perhaps a crevice beneath a coral ledge, or the shelter of an abandoned shell, and transforms herself into a guardian. Here, Olivia will lay thousands of tiny translucent eggs, threading them together like pearls on a silken string. She hangs them from the den ceiling, then begins the vigil that defines her final act. For weeks, sometimes months, Olivia will neither hunt nor wander. She fans her eggs with careful jets of water, keeps them free from silt and predators, and maintains a constant watch. Her colours, once a vibrant palette, now fade to muted tones, blending with the safety of the shadows. This devotion is absolute. She will not eat, will not leave, sacrificing herself for the next generation. By the time the young hatch and drift away on the currents, their mother's work, and often her life, is complete. It's a narrative both poignant and awe-inspiring, a life lived with a quiet purpose, guided by signals invisible to most eyes, crowned by an act of profound generosity. Olivia's story is not unique, but hers is the silent foundation on which the future of her kind rests. There's something universal in this drama, a longing to be understood, a power in being able to choose when and how to speak, and an ability in guarding the vulnerable. It reminds me of the many women in my own family, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, who held the world together with little more than a raised eyebrow, a well-timed glance, or a hand placed gently on a shoulder. Communication, after all, is so often about knowing what not to say. Pig, meanwhile, is having her own crisis of communication. She's spotted the neighbour's Ginger Tom perched just outside the window, and her tail is flicking in a pattern I'm fairly certain translates as "not on my watch." A brief, withering stare from Pig sends the intruder scurrying. No yowls, no fuss, just a silent signal, received and understood. Her work here too is done. Back in the depths, the story of the female octopus is one of agency and ambiguity, of using every tool available, from colour and posture to the stillness of waiting, to shape her world and safeguard the next chapter. Hers is a conversation that speaks to all of us, if we learn to listen. A tale of quiet strength, subtlety, and the beauty of being both seen and unseen. So tonight, as the rain plays its nocturne and Pig returns to her nap, I'll raise my cup to Olivia and her kin, to all those who signal in silence, who guard the future, and who remind us that sometimes the most important messages are whispered, not shouted. Next, we'll journey to the bustling neighbourhoods where octopuses gather, a surprising twist in the tale of solitude and communication beneath the waves. Until then, may your signals be received, your choices respected, and your own quiet acts of heroism never go unnoticed. Octopus neighbourhoods, are they social after all? The world often seems happiest to hand out labels: solitary, social, introvert, extrovert, and tuck every creature neatly into its place. For ages the octopus has been considered a loner, the mysterious poet of the reef, slipping through shadows with little patience for crowds or company. But, as so often happens, the truth is far more complicated, and the ocean, it turns out, is full of surprises. Tonight the study is awash with the golden glow of my reading lamp, its beam a gentle tide pooling across stacks of old field guides and a half-finished crossword. Pig has commandeered my favourite chair, and after considerable negotiation, most of it in silence and meaningful glances, we've agreed to a sort of timeshare arrangement. She is, despite her reputation as a fierce defender of her turf, not immune to the quiet pleasures of community, particularly if it means extra warmth. For much of history, scientists assumed octopuses wanted as little to do with each other as possible. Observations in the wild seem to confirm it. Encounters between adults were rare, and most meetings ended with one party flashing warning colours and the other making a hasty retreat. Solitary by nature, the textbooks declared, and for a time that was that. But the sea is always writing new stories, and sometimes all it takes to spot them is to look a little closer. In the early 21st century, researchers began to notice something peculiar off the coast of Australia. A patch of seafloor littered with the broken shells of scallops and clams, as if a particularly industrious chef had hosted a banquet for 100. The locals dubbed the place Octopolis, and what they found there changed everything. Here, dozens of gloomy octopuses, Octopus tetricus, had gathered, building dens mere arm's length apart from each other. Some lounged at their thresholds, eyes swivelling, arms curling in slow, meditative spirals. Others darted out to snatch a passing crab, or tussled briefly over the choicest shell. Shells, in fact, became currency. The octopuses not only used them to build fortifications, but also arranged them in barricades and occasionally lobbed them at less welcome neighbours. If you've ever seen Pig bat a sock at a trespassing dog, you'll have some sense of the technique. It was, in short, a neighbourhood, untidy, contentious, and very much alive. Scientists watched as the octopuses engaged in a subtle ballet of body language and colour. One might flare dark, sending a keep-out message across the shell-strewn avenue. Another, pressed for space, would adopt softer hues and a hunched posture, signalling no threat intended. There were squabbles, reconciliations, even moments of what could almost be called tolerance, a loose truce among the dwellers of Octopolis. This discovery raised a flurry of questions. Were these gatherings accidental, forced by an abundance of food and shelter? Or had octopuses, long thought to be reclusive, mastered the art of uneasy coexistence? It's a question that still hangs in the salty air like the lingering notes of a sea shanty at closing time. What's clear is that communication flourishes in such places. With neighbours so near, the stakes of misunderstanding are high, and every gesture counts. Quick flashes, slow fades, dramatic posturing. These become vital tools for managing disputes, claiming dens, or simply announcing, "This spot's taken." In one memorable observation, a particularly assertive octopus was seen collecting discarded shells and stacking them into a wall, a clear boundary, an unspoken message, and, if I may say, an act of rather fine engineering. Not all octopus neighbourhoods are so bustling. Sometimes a particularly good hunting ground or a shipwreck-turned reef will draw several together, each staking out a corner, conducting their solitary business in close quarters. It's not a tea party exactly, but neither is it outright war. The rules, as with all good neighbourhoods, are negotiated anew each day. I recall the winter when a stray kitten arrived at our door, bedraggled and wide-eyed. After a week of cool stares and strategic ignoring, Pig allowed the newcomer a corner of her favourite blanket, a silent truce, as heartening in its own way as any octopus's carefully placed shell. What Octopolis and its kin remind us is that the world is never as simple as we imagine. Even the most solitary of creatures may, given the right circumstances, find a way to coexist. Communication, whether through colour, gesture, or the strategic deployment of shells, becomes the glue that holds these fragile societies together. For us too, there's a lesson in these underwater villages. We are each of us solitary sometimes and sociable at others, finding our way among neighbours, friends, and the occasional interloper. Our own Octopolis may be a cul-de-sac, a book club, or a table in a crowded cafe. But the rules are much the same. Negotiate, adapt, and try to avoid lobbing the china. As I sip my tea and Pig curls into a warm comma, I think of all the unseen neighbourhoods out there. Reefs alive with whispered messages, tide pools bustling with quiet deals, living rooms lit by lamplight, and the unspoken agreements of a shared evening. Communication, it seems, is as much about boundaries as it is about bridges. Next, we'll dive into the hidden world of chemical conversations, the scents and signals that drift through water and air, carrying news and intentions in silence. Until then, may your own neighbourhood, however lively or quiet, be filled with tolerance, clear signals, and the occasional kindly truce. If you've ever walked into a kitchen where biscuits have just come out of the oven, or strolled past a flowering hedge after summer rain, you know that some messages are delivered best not by words or colours, but by the invisible, meandering magic of scent. The world is awash with signals that drift quietly through air and water, subtle, persuasive, and nearly impossible to ignore. Tonight my study carries its own quiet symphony of aromas, old books and new tea, wood smoke lingering in the corners, the faint tang of rain on stone. Pig, her nose a quivering antenna, moves between the windowsill and the kitchen door, occasionally pausing to sniff at the floorboards with an intensity that would put any seasoned detective to shame. For cats, the world is written in smells, messages left by passing neighbours, the ghostly memory of last week's roast chicken, and perhaps the whispered promise of supper to come. For octopuses, chemical conversations are woven just as deeply into the business of life. If their world is a gallery of shifting colour and shape, it is also a realm thick with invisible letters, each wave and eddy carrying news, warnings and invitations from one den to another. Scientists call this chemoreception, but to the octopus, it's simply the background music of the sea. Let us imagine for a moment an octopus named Olivia nestled deep in her rocky lair. The current brings more than just the distant hum of the reef. It carries a cascade of scents. The iron tang of blood from a wounded fish, the sharp edge of a crab's panic, the delicate perfume of seaweed in bloom. Each molecule tells a story, and Olivia's finely tuned senses catch every nuance. She knows, without ever peering out, who has passed by, what danger or delight awaits, and how best to plan her next move. Octopus arms, marvellous as they are, play a starring role in this hidden conversation. Each is lined with hundreds of suckers, and every sucker is equipped not just for gripping and tasting, but for sampling the water itself, testing the invisible currents for chemical traces. It's as if your fingertips could not only read Braille, but sniff out a biscuit on the other side of the house. And astonishingly, each arm is something of an independent detective, able to sample, process, and even make simple decisions about the world without consulting the octopus's central brain. Imagine being able to send one hand to the pantry for biscuits, another to the garden for herbs, and a third to gently prod the sleeping cat. Each hand working out its own small mysteries and reporting back only if something truly important comes along. This chemical literacy extends to social life as well. Though much of octopus society is written in colour and gesture, scents play a subtle role in everything from courtship to neighbourly negotiations. When two octopuses share the same patch of reef, the water becomes a blend of their signatures, each learning about the other's recent meals, emotional state, and, if the season is right, readiness for romance. Males seeking a mate may follow faint trails of chemical cues, a watery love letter written in invisible ink. Of course, the world of chemical signals is not always harmonious. Some octopuses, pressed too close by rivals, may release clouds of ink, an act part escape, part announcement. Ink is not just a smokescreen, but a potent cocktail of warning scents, a message to would-be predators and competitors alike. You've pushed me too far, I'm gone, and you'd do well not to follow. Pig, for her part, is an inkless but enthusiastic communicator. When she wants my attention, she employs a technique of rubbing her face on my shins, leaving behind a subtle calling card that says, in no uncertain terms, this human is spoken for. It's a claim both affectionate and efficient, though the occasional guest may disagree. But while some chemical messages are designed to be read from a distance, others are intimate, shared only in the closest quarters. Scientists have speculated that during courtship, octopuses may exchange chemical cues that fine-tune their dances of colour and gesture, a kind of scented conversation that complements the visual, allowing each partner to gauge the other's intent, stress, and sincerity. It's humbling to realise how much of the world's communication drifts by unnoticed, carried not on the waves of sound or light, but in the ceaseless migration of molecules. Long before humans invented language or even eyes, life was busy writing its autobiography in the chemical alphabet, messages of hunger, fear, hope, and kinship wafting quietly through every corner of the ocean. And so, while the stories of colour and movement may grab our attention, the truest gossip on the reef is carried on the tide, deciphered by every creature with a keen nose or sensitive sucker. It's a world where privacy is rare, secrets are fleeting, and every creature's history is quite literally in the water. Pig, now returned to her windowsill, closes her eyes, ears flicking as she dreams. Perhaps she's chasing the ghost scent of a mouse in the garden, or reliving the memory of that one truly spectacular salmon dinner. Her world, like Olivia's, is shaped by signals unseen, by the quiet, persistent language of scent. So tonight, as the study settles and the rain hushes to a drizzle, I'll lift my teacup in salute to all the invisible messages that bind us, to the stories carried by the tide, the whispers of the garden, the promises of supper, and the gentle warmth of a familiar scent in the dark. Next, we'll explore how octopuses learn and even mimic one another, how observation, curiosity, and a dash of imitation shape their world, and perhaps our own. Until then, may your nose for news never fail you, and your evenings be filled with gentle, comforting signals of home. There are those who say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. If that's so, then the octopus is the world's most unassuming show-off, performing a repertoire of silent impressions that would leave even the finest pantomime green with envy. The sea, after all, is not just a stage, it's a school, a laboratory, and a never-ending game of who can you be today. Tonight my study feels like a gentle theatre. Pig sprawled centre stage, my mug of tea poised like a prop, rain muttering softly against the glass. The books are arranged in crooked towers, as if waiting for their cue. Pig stretches extravagantly before flopping into a dramatic loaf, but it is the octopus who truly masters the performance. Few creatures on Earth can match their flair for mimicry, their willingness to borrow another's style, even another's body. The mimic octopus of Indonesia is the grandmaster, able to impersonate venomous lionfish, stinging flatfish, and even bands of sea snakes, all with nothing but posture, colour, and an astonishing sense of timing. One moment, the octopus glides as a drifting clump of algae. The next, it transforms into a swaggering striped danger, fooling even the most attentive of predators. But the performance is not just for show. At its heart, mimicry is a language, a way of broadcasting intent, confusion, or bravado. To become another animal, even for a moment, is to rewrite the rules of the encounter. Sometimes it's a warning. I am not to be trifled with. Other times, it's a plea for invisibility. Slip by unnoticed, live to hunt another day. Octopuses are quick learners too. In laboratory settings, they've been shown to watch one another solve puzzles, unscrewing jars, opening latches, navigating mazes, and then copy the solution, sometimes after a single demonstration. Imagine Pig, having watched me open the treat tin just once, becoming a master of the art. On second thought, let's not. The world is unprepared for that kind of innovation. In the wild, this knack for learning means that an octopus might observe a rival's hunting technique, or a neighbour's trick for warding off predators, then quietly adopt the best parts for itself. It's not so different from the way we pick up a friend's turn of phrase, or the way Pig, after watching me rearrange the cushions for maximum comfort, now claims the warmest spot with uncanny precision. But there's more to the octopus's mimicry than simple copying. It is, in a sense, a kind of storytelling, a performance staged in the hope of influencing the world. Consider a young octopus still learning the ways of the reef, observing an elder's warning flash or defensive posture. The message is not just do as I do, but understand why I do it. Mimicry becomes a dialogue across generations, a way of passing on knowledge without ever uttering a word. Sometimes this learning has unexpected consequences. Scientists have seen octopuses in close quarters begin to resemble each other over time, adopting similar resting postures or favouring the same kinds of dens. It's as if the boundaries between individuals blur, each borrowing from the other, until the reef itself becomes a tapestry of shared gestures and half-remembered tricks. Pig, for her part, is an eager but inconsistent student. She'll observe with laser focus as I prepare tea, head tilted, tail twitching, only to promptly forget every detail when her true goal, a slice of cheese, a bit of tuna, is not forthcoming. Yet in her quieter moments, I see echoes of our years together. The way she hops into my chair as soon as I vacate it, or mirrors my afternoon stretch with a luxuriant yawn of her own. We are, all of us, creatures of habit and influence, shaped by the ones we watch most closely. In the Octopuses world, imitation is both art and survival. The mimic octopus, with its bag of impersonations, can cross treacherous ground by becoming something too prickly, poisonous, or peculiar to eat. Even species without such spectacular acts employ subtle mimicry, adopting the posture or colour of anemones, seaweed or stone, copying the patterns that mean safety or invisibility. But learning is not always about blending in. Sometimes it's about standing out. Young octopuses, watching a parent or neighbour dazzle a rival with a unique colour flare or dance, may experiment, invent, or embellish, adding new moves to the repertoire. Over time, the grammar of gestures evolves, becomes richer, a living, learning language written in posture, pigment, and play. There's a certain humility in all this. To mimic, to learn, is to admit that others have something to teach us, that survival, joy, even identity itself is a group project, shaped by observation and imagination. It is perhaps the heart of all community, to watch, to borrow, to improve. So tonight, as Pig finally curls herself into a perfect spiral, mirroring the ammonites on the wallpaper and the swirling milk in my tea, I'll raise my cup to the great mimes of the world, octopus and cat, child and grown up, all of us learning by watching, all of us, in the end, actors on a stage larger than we ever imagined. Next, we'll reflect on the loneliness of signals, how, in a world of brief encounters and silent gestures, even the most brilliant message can go unheard, and why that matters. Until then, may your lessons come kindly, your performances be appreciated, and your world be filled with good teachers and attentive students. Sometimes, when the world has shrunk to the gentle tick of the study clock and the faint hum of the kettle, I find myself pondering the signals we send out into the vastness, words, glances, colours, songs, hoping they'll be received, understood, maybe even cherished. There's a peculiar kind of courage in this, casting your meaning into the dark, not knowing if an answer will ever come. Tonight, the rain has gone from whisper to lullaby, a soft, relentless patter on the roof. Pig, having dispatched her duties as watchcat, is curled in an improbable crescent on my lap, the tip of her tail twitching as she dreams. The house feels both smaller and infinitely more expansive at this hour, a single island in a restless sea of stories. Down below in the endless blue, the octopus knows this feeling intimately. For all their colour and drama, most of their lives are lived alone. Their meetings, however electric, are usually fleeting. A warning, a courtship, a territorial standoff. They flash their colours and ripple their arms. They posture and gesture, and then, just as quickly, they melt away, fading into shadow, blending into the coral and sand. Most signals in the octopus world are sent in hope rather than certainty. What does it mean, I wonder, to be a master of communication in a world where true conversations are rare? To spend your days refining a language of colour, touch, and gesture, knowing that most of the time no one is watching? It strikes me as an act of faith, one echoed perhaps in the notes sent out by whales across the ocean, the pollen carried by wind from one flower to the next, or the radio signals we humans have beamed into the black with only the vaguest hope of reply. The loneliness of signals isn't just an animal thing, it's profoundly human too. Every letter slipped through a slot, every poem scribbled in the margin, every good morning whispered to an empty kitchen, all are messages that may or may not find their mark. Sometimes we flash our brightest colours or extend our friendliest arms, only to have the world swim right past oblivious. Sometimes the greatest act of connection is simply the willingness to try again. I'm reminded of my own most memorable unanswered message, a letter I once sent at the foolishly hopeful age of 16 to a favourite author. I laboured over every line, filled the envelope with all my questions, affixed a stamp with trembling hands, and never heard a word in reply. For years that silence felt like an emptiness, a door gently closing. But looking back now, I see it differently. The letter, written in earnestness and wonder, still shaped me. The act of sending was itself a kind of arrival. For the octopus, each burst of colour is both a declaration and an invitation. I am here. I am angry or curious or in the mood for romance. Most of the time there's no reply, just the swirling currents, the shifting sand. But once in a while a flash is returned, a gesture mirrored, a ripple recognised. For a moment, however brief, two lives intersect, and the loneliness recedes. Pig too is a sender of signals, though her audience is limited to the handful of humans and one or two intrepid garden birds who pay her any mind. She has mastered the slow blink of trust, the tail flick of annoyance, the gentle headbutt of affection. Each is offered in the hope of a response. Sometimes I am too busy, my head deep in a book or my hands full of biscuit dough, and her message goes unanswered. But when I look up, really look, the world floods with meaning. Connection blooms where before there was only silence. There is a beauty, I think, in the willingness to signal anyway, to speak your colour or your truth, even if the world seems deaf or indifferent. The octopus reminds us that the act of sending is worthwhile for its own sake, that every ripple shapes the water, every flash lights the dark, even if only for a heartbeat. And sometimes, astonishingly, a signal sent into the unknown comes echoing back. A hand found, a letter returned, a story told and retold. We live, all of us, in a sea of signals, some bold, some shy, some never meant to be answered at all. The trick, perhaps, is to accept the loneliness not as emptiness, but as possibility. The open water, the blank page, the silent sky, all waiting for our flash of colour, our ripple, our word. If connection is rare, that only makes it more precious when it arrives. Tonight, as Pig shifts in her sleep, I brush my hand across her fur and feel the warmth of a quiet bond. A message, received and returned. Out in the deep, perhaps an octopus rests, dreaming of a ripple sent, a flash received, a brief communion in the blue, and across the world countless signals drift and dance, carrying our hopes, our fears, ourselves toward shores we may never see. Next, we'll explore how octopuses, faced with danger, use their language of bluff and display, outsmarting their foes with daring acts of deception and theatrical bravado. Until then, may your signals be bright, your messages courageous, and your heart always open to the reply you never expected. Bluffing in the blue. Danger, in the underwater world, is a constant companion. Every shadow might conceal a hungry moray eel, every swirl of sand a lurking grouper. For an octopus, soft-bodied, delicious, and lacking the armour or teeth of its neighbours, the art of survival depends not on brute strength but on wit, speed, and a dazzling flair for deception. Tonight, as wind rattles the windows and the world outside the study feels both remote and wild, Pig prowls the borders of the carpet, tail swishing in predatory arcs, a panther in miniature, the terror of dust bunnies and wayward shoelaces, a master of the bluff. Under the sea the stakes are far higher. Octopuses are famed escape artists, but when running isn't an option, bluffing becomes an act of life and death. Their performances rival anything you might see on a West End stage, and the costumes change in the blink of an eye. Imagine Olivia, our familiar heroine, drifting through the coral maze. She spots a barracuda sliding closer, sleek and silver, eyes glinting with intent. Olivia knows she's outmatched. Speed alone won't save her. Instead, she gathers herself, arms swelling, colours blooming in a display of sudden ferocity. In an instant, she becomes double her size, flashing bands of black and white, her mantle raised in a menacing hood. She is, for a moment, something else entirely. Dangerous, untouchable, perhaps even poisonous. Sometimes the act is even more elaborate. The famous mimic octopus found on muddy Indonesian flats can impersonate not just a single creature, but a whole gallery of sea life. Need to deter a stingray. The mimic arranges its arms and undulates, becoming a flattened, fluttering threat. Suspect a crab-hungry damselfish nearby. Instantly the octopus splits its body, stripes two arms, and mimics a banded sea snake, nature's warning in black and white. There are subtler deceptions too. Some octopuses adopt the colour and posture of venomous lionfish, splaying their arms like spines. Others merge with seagrass, swaying gently with the tide, or imitate a lifeless clump of rock hiding in plain sight. All of it is theatre, designed to send predators second-guessing. Is this easy prey, or something not worth the trouble? Scientists have marvelled at just how flexible these displays can be. Unlike most animals, who must pick a single defensive strategy and stick to it, the octopus's wardrobe is endless, its stage directions improvised anew with each encounter. There are no rehearsals, no script, just pure instinctive brilliance. Not every act of bluff is about escape. Sometimes it's about confrontation. When two octopuses meet over a particularly fine den or a juicy morsel of crab, both may escalate their postures, arms unfurling, colours pulsing in duelling waves. It is a contest of nerves. The first to retreat loses, but a fight avoided is a limb, and a future preserved. There are even moments of tactical reverse bluff. An octopus, sensing that a predator expects a certain display, may subvert expectations entirely, remaining utterly motionless, colours muted, drawing the eye away with a sudden burst of ink. The ink, too, is a tool of misdirection. A dark, billowing curtain that confuses the pursuer delivers a blast of noxious chemicals to the nose and allows for a quick getaway. It is both message and escape hatch, written in water. The octopus's greatest performances are witnessed only by hungry eyes and the shifting currents. Yet the effectiveness of these acts shapes the lineage. Every successful bluff is a story written into the DNA, every clever escape a lesson passed on, not in words, but in the quiet pressure of survival. We humans are no strangers to deception, though our reasons are often less dire. We bluff at cards, feign indifference at parties, and sometimes wear a brave face when we feel anything but. Our signals can be just as layered. Smiles hiding nerves, casual words concealing worry, a little colour in the cheeks when the right person looks our way. It's all theatre, really, and the world, as the old saying goes, is the stage. For the octopus, deception is not just a trick, but a way of living lightly in a world full of shadows and teeth. To bluff is to survive another day, to keep the story going. For Pig, and for me, perhaps the lesson is that sometimes pretending to be braver than you feel is itself an act of courage. If the signals are received, if the bluff works, the night belongs to the clever and the quick. So tonight, as the wind quiets and Pig curls into her favourite spot, innocent as an angel, cunning as a fox, I raise my teacup to all the bluffers, mimics, and quiet magicians. Next, we'll marvel at the mysteries that remain. How much of the octopus's language we still don't understand, and what that says about our own search for meaning in a noisy, dazzling world. Until then, may your disguises be clever, your performances graceful, and your escapes, should you need them, always shrouded in a bit of harmless smoke. There is a peculiar pleasure in mystery, a comfort found not in answers, but in the exquisite hum of questions we may never resolve. The older I get, the more I relish this feeling, as if life itself were a puzzle box that invites you to fiddle endlessly, always revealing something new just as you think you've figured out the last bit. Tonight, the rain is nothing more than a memory, beads of water clinging to the glass, blurring the world into Monet-like brush strokes. The study glows with the muted light of a single lamp. Pig, after an evening spent in high vigilance, is now curled atop my dictionary, snoring with the authority of one who knows that words, for all their uses, are sometimes beside the point. It is the perfect hour for mysteries, and the octopus, our hero and muse, offers them in abundance. For all we have learned about octopus communication, the ripples of colour, the eloquent posture, the silent semaphore beneath the waves, so much remains hidden. It is a language of astonishing subtlety, layered and dynamic, responsive to every shift of current, shadow and mood. And yet, for all our observation, we decode only the roughest outlines. Scientists in their patient, often soggy pursuit have managed to catalogue the broadest strokes. This flash means aggression, that pulse signals alarm, a certain stillness hints at the fragile possibility of trust. But ask any biologist about the finer points, the secret meanings, the jokes and flirtations, and perhaps even moments of cephalopod melancholy, and you'll get a gentle shrug. The code is always changing. Each individual seems to invent new gestures, new rhythms, new accents. It's as if we've tuned into a great cosmic conversation but can only catch every third word. Imagine, for a moment, listening to Pig as she meows in the kitchen. There are the obvious messages. Feed me, let me out, you're sitting in my spot. But sometimes, as she twines around my legs or gazes out into the dark, I suspect she's broadcasting thoughts so complex and ancient that I'll never catch their meaning. We live side by side, bonded by touch and ritual, but vast territories of her mind will always be private country. So it is with the octopus. We watch, we guess, we record hours of silent negotiation beneath the sea, but so much of what passes between them remains, and may always remain, out of reach. Their intelligence is not the mirror of our own. It is older, weirder, more liquid and improvisational. A mind with 8 arms, each capable of its own exploration. A memory shaped by taste and scent and colour, by moments as fleeting as the ripples in a tide pool. And then there are their dreams. Yes, dreams. Scientists watching octopuses doze in their dens have seen colours flicker across their skin as they sleep. A silent cinema that plays beneath closed eyes. What stories unfold in those nighttime shows? Are they reliving the thrill of a successful hunt, the narrow escape from a moray, a particularly satisfying shell collection? Or is it some inner incommunicable wonder, known only to the dreamer? For me, the greatest delight lies in knowing that we will never know it all. The octopus invites us to embrace the joy of partial understanding, to recognise that some languages are not meant to be translated completely. To love a mystery is to be in dialogue with the world itself, to admit that the most important questions are often the ones we cannot answer. Pig, too, is a perpetual mystery. Her moods shift like weather. Her loyalties are fierce but enigmatic. One moment she's a purring presence in my lap. The next she's a ghost in the garden, vanished without a trace. I could spend a lifetime cataloguing her signals and still be surprised every day. And perhaps that is as it should be. There's a gentle wisdom in accepting our limits. Sometimes, in our rush to know, we lose the art of wonder. The octopus, with its changing colours and unfathomable mind, reminds us that not every message is meant for us, and not every secret can be shared. Some things are beautiful precisely because they remain elusive. A glimmer at the corner of your eye, a song heard in the distance, a ripple on the skin of the sea. So tonight, as Pig sighs in her sleep and the lamp glows softer, I'll toast the mysteries that keep us searching, the uncracked codes, the unfinished stories, the signals we send and the ones we long to receive. May we never tire of questions, nor lose the wonder that first drew us to peer beneath the surface, to listen for the silent grammar of the reef. Next, we'll step back and ponder the nature of communication itself, how, whether in silence, colour or presence, the truest conversations often happen without a word. Until then, may your mysteries be joyful, your questions fruitful, and your heart always tuned to the music beneath the obvious. Silence, colour and presence. There is a hush that settles over the world in the deepest part of night. A hush so soft and dense it feels almost tangible, like velvet pressed against your skin. It is in this hour, when the lamplight is pooled golden on the table and Pig has finally relinquished her claim to the windowsill in favour of my lap, that I find myself musing on the conversations that happen without a single word spoken. We live, all of us, in a churning sea of signals, some broadcast in speech, some painted in colour, and some whispered by simple presence. The more I think about it, the more I suspect that the truest language is the one carried in silence, in the gentle weight of a gaze or the curl of a tail, or the way an octopus lets its colours ripple across its body as it glides through the blue. For octopuses, as we've seen, the world is a perpetual dialogue, even when solitude seems to reign. A passing flash of white, a spiral of arm, a change in the lay of the skin, each is a line in a conversation written in the language of now. Even when no other octopus is nearby to receive the message, even when the only witness is a curious shrimp or the drifting shadow of a ray, the conversation continues. It is, in a sense, an act of faith, a belief that presence is enough, that to be seen is to be heard, even if only by the world itself. Pig, whose vocalizations range from the faintest chirrup to the full-throated yowl of "you forgot second breakfast," is perhaps my best teacher in this art of presence. There's a particular kind of magic in these silent conversations. They transcend the clumsiness of words, leap across species and circumstance, and nestle in the heart. When I think back over the years, the moments that shimmer brightest are not those filled with talk, but the ones wrapped in shared quiet, a companionable walk through the rain, a child's hand tucked into mine, the hush of a library just before the page turns. For octopuses, presence is written in light and movement, but for us, it can be as simple as sitting together through a thunderstorm, or sharing a pot of tea in the last blue of evening. Sometimes, the most eloquent "I love you" is a blanket offered on a cold night, or the way a friend lingers in the doorway after everyone else has gone. It is a kind of Morse code written in tea steam and patience, in kindness and attention, in showing up, again and again. Scientists tell us that some octopuses, even in their solitude, will flash colours just for themselves. A private ripple, a rehearsal, perhaps, or a moment of self-expression. Pig, too, sometimes leaps after shadows with nobody watching but the garden moths. And haven't we all, at one point or another, danced when nobody was looking, or sung to the empty kitchen, or spun a story in our own heads just for the pleasure of hearing it? I think there's great wisdom in this, to communicate not only to be understood, but simply to be. To fill the world with our colour and presence, to be a signal in the dark, a warmth in the cold, a gentle ripple on the vast surface of life. It is this, perhaps, that links us all. The octopus in her den, Pig on her cushion, and you, dear listener, wherever you are tonight. We are each beacons casting out messages in 1,000 subtle ways, hoping for connection and finding it sometimes not in answers, but in the sheer act of sending. This is why we read bedtime stories, or sit by the radio, or hold someone's hand. It's why we keep the porch light on, or wait up late, or tuck a note into a lunchbox. It's the impulse at the root of every painting, every song, every purr and colour flash and touch. It's the desire to say, again and again, I am here, I see you, I am with you. Pig, now thoroughly asleep, lets out a tiny snore, a Morse code of contentment that needs no translation. So tonight, as we near the end of our journey, I invite you to notice the silent languages around you, the flicker of a cat's tail, the hush of the evening, the pattern of light across the walls. Listen for the unspoken messages, honour the presence of those who sit quietly beside you, and take comfort in the knowledge that, even in silence, we're all speaking the same universal tongue. The house is utterly still now, only the faintest sigh of wind against the glass, the low murmur of the heater, and the gentle, even breathing of Pig curled contentedly at my feet. The world outside is blanketed in darkness, and for a moment it feels as if the whole of Sussex is holding its breath, waiting for something delicate and invisible to pass through. In this soft cocoon of lamplight and shadow, I find myself reflecting on the day's journey, from the coral palaces of the deep to the bustling, bickering neighbourhoods of Octopolis, from brilliant flashes of colour to the subtlest Morse code of presence and patience. We've wandered far together tonight, and yet it is here, in the hush of this small room, that the deepest meaning settles in. I think of Olivia, the octopus, nestled in her den, her eggs swaying gently in the current. Though her world is one of solitude, she's never truly alone. Her presence, her signals, every pulse and shimmer are woven into the fabric of the reef, part of a conversation older than memory. And I think too of all the silent messages drifting through the dark this very moment. The slow blink of trust between friends, the hand placed quietly on a shoulder, the whispered good night that lingers in the air long after the light is switched off. There is a kindness in these gentle signals, a warmth that persists even when no words are spoken, when no reply comes. We are, each of us, participants in this nightly symphony, sending out our hopes, our worries, our love in colours, in gestures, in presence. We crave understanding and comfort, and sometimes the universe answers with a ripple of recognition, a cat's purr, a shimmer of moonlight, a story that finds you just when you need it most. Pig is fully asleep now. I sip the last of my tea, lukewarm but all the sweeter for its lateness, and watch the patterns of shadow dance across the study walls. It strikes me that the greatest comfort is not always found in answers, but in knowing we are not alone in our longing, our signalling, our search for connection. Whether by colour or by purr, by touch or by presence, we are all, in our own way, sending messages into the dark, and hoping, with quiet courage, that someone will understand. And so, dear listener, as you settle into your own quiet corner of the night, I send you one final message, gentle, wordless, carried on the steam of a last perfect cup. May your silences be companionable, your presence always noticed, and your signals answered with kindness. And above all, mind the damp, bring a biscuit, and never ever try to outstare a puffin. Until next time, sleep well, dream deeply, and may your teacup never be empty. And so, dear listener, as the last of the teacups cools and Pig begins to snore most contentedly on the windowsill, we come to the end of tonight's tale. If you've enjoyed this little ramble through the improbable and the quietly profound, do be a dear and like the episode and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the tea flowing, the lights low, and the cats, both remembered and yet to be, well fed and purring. And don't forget, you're warmly invited to join our free Substack. It's where you'll hear about each new episode as it arrives, and where our growing circle of sleepy science enthusiasts gathers to swap thoughts, dream up topics, and gently bicker about whether Pluto should bring a casserole to the next planetary reunion. Now, one last thing. Tonight's story has been for entertainment purposes only. It is not, strictly speaking, fact. Nor is it entirely fiction. Rather, it exists in that peculiar quantum superposition of the two until observed, preferably over a cup of something warm. Sleep well, and until next time, may your teacup never be empty.